The cargo bay smelled like death and expensive perfume. Harveth moved through the narrow walkway between containment cells, his four arms clasped behind his carapace in satisfaction. Behind him, three potential buyers whispered nervously to each other as they peered through the reinforced glass at nightmares made flesh. This was the finest collection in the known galaxy. Harveth had spent 40 cycles assembling it, traveling to worlds most sapient species feared to approach. Each specimen represented the apex of lethality from its home system. Each one had earned its place through blood and terror. "Here we have the rendering worms of Sector 9, Harveth announced, stopping before a cell filled with writhing pale shapes the size of his leg. They burrow into living hosts and dissolve organic matter from within. 3 of these creatures ended all complex life on 4 colony worlds before containment protocols were established." The buyers edged closer despite their obvious fear. One of them, a wealthy Drellian merchant with too many eyes, tapped notes into her datapad. Money was already changing accounts in her mind. Harveth could see it in the way her tentacles quivered. They moved to the next exhibit. The cell appeared empty until Harveth activated the reality stabilizers. Suddenly 6 massive shapes materialized, things that looked like they were assembled from broken mirrors and bad dreams. They turned toward the viewers with interest that felt hungry. "Phase stalkers from the dark nebula," Harveth explained. "They exist partially outside normal space. Walls mean nothing to them. They hunted 3 separate species to extinction before we developed the technology to keep them anchored in our dimension." The Drellian merchant made a sound that might have been appreciation or nausea. Her security guard, a hulking biped covered in scars, kept his weapon hand near his holster. Smart creature. But the crown jewel waited at the end of the bay. Harveth led them to the largest cell where 20 feet of armored death prowled back and forth. The Titan Raptor was magnificent. Its hide looked like it could deflect ship weapons. Acid dripped from its jaws, sizzling where it hit the specially treated floor. When it roared, the sound rattled their bones through the containment field. "Only 6 of these remain in existence," Harveth said quietly. "Their world died when its sun collapsed, but not before they killed everything else that lived there. This male is the largest specimen ever captured. Observe the musculature, the claw structure, the neural capacity indicated by cranial size. A perfect killing machine." The buyers were sold. Harveth could tell. Numbers were discussed in hushed tones. Contracts would be drafted. The syndicate would profit handsomely from this showing. Yet Harveth felt incomplete. One specimen remained uncollected, one world unexplored. The humans of Sol 3 had only recently achieved faster-than-light communication, making contact with galactic civilization. Initial surveys labeled their planet a Class 12 death world, nearly uninhabitable by civilized standards, gravity that would crush most species, atmospheric oxygen levels that were practically combustible, predators everywhere. But the humans themselves were disappointing. Weak bipeds with no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. They had conquered their world through tool use and social cooperation, nothing more. Hardly the stock that produced the kind of specimens Harveth collected. Still, Earth did have apex predators. The database listed several candidates. Harveth had selected the largest terrestrial carnivore, something called a grizzly bear. It would round out the collection nicely. A creature from the newest death world, proof that the syndicate's reach extended even to the most recently contacted systems. "We depart for Earth tomorrow," Harveth announced to his crew after the buyers had left. "Prepare Collection Team Alpha, standard Death World protocols. We will be back within 3 local cycles." His huntmaster Drevak clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. The target. A simple beast, large, aggressive, but nothing we have not handled before. The humans barely register as a technological species. There will be no complications. Drevak had collected on 97 worlds. He had faced creatures that defied imagination. A primitive Earth predator would be routine work. The collection ship broke orbit from the trading station where they had been docked. Stars stretched into lines as they entered faster than light transit. Earth was 3 jumps away through established lanes. The syndicate had already filed the necessary paperwork with the local human authorities, or at least what passed for authorities among such a scattered, disorganized species. Technically, the collection was illegal by human law, but what could they do about it? They barely had presence beyond their own moon. Their weapons were chemical and kinetic, laughably primitive. Their society was fragmented into competing factions that could not even agree on basic resource distribution. Harveth reviewed the files on grizzly bears as they traveled. Impressive animals by Deathworld standards. 800 pounds of muscle and claw, bite force that could crush bone, territorial and aggressive when threatened. The males were larger, more impressive for display purposes. The collection would be simple. Locate a specimen, sedate it, transport it to the ship. They had equipment designed to handle creatures 10 times more dangerous. Earth's gravity was higher than standard, but his team's powered armor would compensate. The operation would take less than 1 local hour. 3 days later, the ship entered Earth's orbit. Scanners swept across the North American continent, identifying suitable specimens in areas called national parks. Strange concept, preserving wilderness when the land could be developed. More evidence of human peculiarity. They selected a large male in a remote mountain region. Perfect isolation, minimal chance of interference. Drevak assembled the team. 6 hunters, full combat loadout, stun weapons, and containment equipment. Harveth watched from the ship as the transport pod descended through Earth's atmosphere. Another specimen for the collection. Another world catalogued. Another perfect example of nature's cruelty preserved behind glass. He had no reason to expect this collection would be different from any other. He was wrong. Pine needles crunched under Drevak's armored boots as the collection team spread out through the forest. His helmet display showed thermal signatures scattered throughout the area. Deer, small mammals, birds, nothing threatening. The target was half a kilometer ahead, near a river bend where the salmon were running. Perfect conditions for collection. The bear would be focused on feeding, unaware of their approach until too late. Drevak had hunted things that could tear through starship hulls. He had tracked predators that moved faster than sound. This primitive Earth creature would barely register as a challenge. Still, protocol demanded respect for any Deathworld species. Overconfidence had killed better hunters than him. The team moved into position, forming a perimeter around the feeding area. Drevak checked his stun rifle, making sure the charge was calibrated for the target's estimated mass. 1 shot would drop the bear instantly. The containment field would activate, and they would have it loaded in the transport within minutes. Through the trees, Drevak spotted their prize. The grizzly was massive, even by the species standards. Probably 900 pounds, its brown fur silvered with age. It stood in the shallow water, completely focused on the salmon darting past its legs. When it struck, the movement was remarkably fast for something so large. Claws like daggers speared a fish and brought it to the bear's jaws. Drevak signaled the team. They raised their weapons in unison. The bear's head snapped up. It had heard something, or perhaps smelled them despite the wind direction. Its small eyes locked onto Drevak's position with intelligence that seemed almost calculating. Then it charged. The stun beams hit the bear from 3 directions simultaneously, enough voltage to drop a cargo transport. The grizzly stumbled but did not fall. It kept coming, roaring with a sound that seemed to shake the mountain itself. Drevak fired again, joined by 2 more hunters. The bear finally collapsed 20 feet from their position, its momentum carrying it forward in a sliding heap. Tougher than expected, one hunter commented, checking his weapon's power levels. Drevak approached cautiously. The bear was breathing but unconscious, its massive chest rising and falling. Impressive specimen. Harveth would be pleased. They activated the mobile containment unit and began maneuvering the bear's bulk into position. That was when the human appeared. Drevak saw him on thermal first, a single signature approaching through the trees with no attempt at stealth. The human was alone, carrying no visible weapons, wearing simple fabric clothing and a wide-brimmed hat. Middle-aged by human standards, with weathered skin and calm eyes that took in the scene without apparent surprise. "What are you doing?" the human asked in his native language. Drevak's translator rendered it instantly. The collection team turned their weapons toward the newcomer, though none fired. Rules of engagement prohibited harming sentient species unless directly threatened. This human posed no obvious danger. "We are collectors of rare fauna," Drevak explained, gesturing toward the unconscious bear. "This specimen will be well cared for. In our menagerie, you need not be concerned." The human walked closer, stopping just outside the containment perimeter. He looked at the bear, then at the armed aliens surrounding it, then back at Drevak. His expression remained neutral, almost bemused. "That bear lives here," the human said simply. "You cannot take it." Drevak felt something like irritation. Humans were known to be territorial about resources, but this was absurd. "This creature is dangerous. It has killed members of your species. We are removing a threat." "No," the human replied. "You are stealing a protected animal from a protected area. Put it back." One of Drevak's hunters laughed, the sound harsh through his helmet speakers. The human did not react. He simply stood there waiting, as if his words carried weight that physics could measure. Drevak decided to try a different approach. He activated his datapad, bringing up images of the collection. "Human, observe what we have already collected: creatures that have destroyed cities, predators that have killed thousands. This simple bear is nothing in comparison. You should be grateful we are taking it." The human looked at the images without flinching. He studied the rendering worms, the phase stalkers, the titan raptor. Then he looked back at Drevak. "I am asking you politely to return the bear and leave," the human said. "This is a national park. That bear is protected by law. More than that, it belongs here." "Your laws do not apply to us," Drevak stated flatly. "We operate under galactic salvage and collection statutes. Your species lacks the standing to enforce local regulations on non-native entities." The human was silent for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. A communication radio, Drevak's sensors identified. Primitive electromagnetic transmission technology. The human pressed a button and spoke into the device. "This is Ranger Owen at Cedar Creek. We have a situation. Contact the superintendent, the regional office, and federal wildlife. Tell them someone is trying to take one of our bears. Yes, I am serious. No, I do not need backup. Just make the calls." He lowered the radio and looked at Drevak. "You should put it back now." Drevak had lost patience with this absurd encounter. "We are leaving, human. Your primitive authorities cannot reach us, let alone stop us. This specimen is now property of the Quarath Syndicate." The human named Owen said nothing. He simply walked to a nearby fallen log and sat down, pulling a metal container from his pack. He unscrewed the top and poured steaming liquid into a cup. Coffee, Drevak's database identified. A mild stimulant beverage. Owen settled in as if he had all the time in the universe. He sipped his coffee and watched the collection team load the unconscious bear into their transport pod. "You will regret this," Owen said quietly, almost to himself. Drevak ignored him. The collection was complete. They had their specimen. One backward human ranger with his primitive radio and his empty threats meant nothing. The transport pod sealed shut. The team boarded and lifted off, leaving Owen sitting on his log, drinking his coffee, watching them rise into the sky. 3 days later, Drevak would remember that moment and understand that Owen had not been making a threat. He had been making a promise. Harveth completed his morning inspection of the collection with satisfaction. The new Earth specimen had adapted well to containment. The grizzly bear, still sedated for its own safety, would make an excellent addition once properly acclimated. Already 2 buyers had expressed serious interest. He moved through the cargo bay, checking each cell systematically. The Titan raptor paced its enclosure with predatory grace. The phase stalkers flickered in and out of visibility. Everything was in order. Then Harveth reached the cell housing the rendering worms. "Empty." He stood frozen, staring at bare floor where 13 of the galaxy's most dangerous parasites should have been writhing. The containment field was active. Security measures showed green across the board. Environmental controls registered normal, but the cell contained nothing except recycled air. Harvith's 4 arms began trembling. He activated his communicator with mounting panic. "Security to Bay 3 immediately. We have a breach." The response was instantaneous. Armed guards flooded the area, weapons ready, scanners sweeping every surface. The head of security, a professional who had served on military vessels, ran diagnostics on the containment system. "No breach detected," she reported, confusion evident in her voice. "Fields are intact, no power fluctuations, no unauthorized access. The cell has been sealed since the specimens were placed inside." "Then where are they?" Harvith demanded, his voice rising to a screech. That hurt his own hearing. Nobody had an answer. They reviewed security footage. The camera showed the rendering worms moving normally in their cell until approximately 3 hours ago. Then in the space between one frame and the next, they simply ceased to exist. No flash of light, no energy signature, no spatial distortion. They were there, and then they were not. Before Harvith could process this impossibility, his communicator shrieked with another alert. The phase stalkers were gone. Harvith ran to their cell, his legs moving faster than dignity allowed. Empty. Completely, impossibly empty. 6 creatures that existed partially outside normal reality, held by technology that cost more than a small planet, vanished without trace. "Lock down the ship," Harvith ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Full scan of every system, find those specimens." The crew worked frantically. Every sensor was deployed, every possibility explored. Malfunction, sabotage, theft, dimensional breach, quantum anomaly, nothing fit. The creatures were simply gone as if they had never existed at all. Then the Titan Raptor disappeared. Harvith watched it happen on live feed. The massive predator was mid-stride across its cell when it winked out of existence like a switched-off light. One moment, 20 feet of armored death. The next moment, empty space. Panic spread through the ship like fire through dry grass. The buyers who were still aboard demanded explanations. Some accused the syndicate of fraud. Others whispered about curses and ancient powers. The crew checked and rechecked systems that stubbornly insisted nothing was wrong. Over the next 6 hours, specimen after specimen vanished. The acid-spitting melt spawn from Rigel 7, the psionic mind-burners that had terrorized the outer colonies, the crystalline shardlings that could survive in hard vacuum, all of them gone. The only creature that remained was the grizzly bear from Earth, still unconscious in its cell. Harvith stood in the middle of his empty collection, feeling his carefully constructed career crumbling around him. 40 cycles of work, specimens worth more than most worlds. Gone, all of it gone. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission." "From who?" Harvith asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Unknown source. It is broadcasting on open channels in multiple languages, including ours." "Play it." The message was simple, almost insultingly so. Just 7 words in clear galactic trade language, followed by the same message in Quarath speech, then in every major language in the known database. "Return what you took, last warning." The transmission origin was traced to Earth, specifically to the same region where they had collected the bear. Harvith felt something he had not experienced in many cycles. Fear. Not the thrill of hunting dangerous prey, but genuine, cold fear of something beyond his understanding. "Get me everything we have on Earth," he ordered. "Every file, every survey, every first contact report, and find out what we know about the human we encountered during collection." The data arrived within minutes. Earth, Class 12 Death World. Humans, recently contacted species with primitive technology. No significant military capability. No advanced sciences. They barely qualified for associate membership in galactic civilization. But then Harveth found a note buried in the xenopsychology reports, a warning from one of the first contact teams. Recommend caution in dealings with humans. Species displays unusual psychological characteristics, strong attachment to concepts difficult to translate directly. Terms like sacred, protected, inalienable. Humans appear to assign non-material value to objects, locations, and living things in ways that do not correlate with economic or practical benefit. Suggest further study before extensive trade negotiations. Harveth read the note 3 times. Non-material value, sacred, protected. The human ranger had used that word, protected. "Sir, what do we do?" Drevek asked. The huntmaster looked shaken, his confidence from the collection operation completely evaporated. Harveth looked at the empty cells, at the one remaining specimen, at the message still displayed on his screen. "Return what you took." "Prepare a shuttle," Harveth said quietly. "I am going back to Earth. I am going to find this human, and I am going to get answers." "And if he is hostile?" Harveth laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Hostile? He made our entire collection disappear across half the galaxy without leaving a trace or tripping a single alarm. If he wanted to be hostile, we would already be dead." The shuttle launched 3 hours later. Harveth sat alone in the passenger compartment, reviewing what little information they had on Ranger Owen. The human had no special qualifications, no advanced degrees, no military background. He simply worked in what humans called a national park, maintaining trails and monitoring wildlife. Yet somehow, this ordinary human from a primitive world had reached across space and made nightmares vanish. Harveth needed to understand how. His survival might depend on it. The shuttle landed in the same clearing they had used for the collection operation. Harveth descended the ramp with Drevak at his side, both unarmed by mutual agreement. This was not a combat mission. This was something far more delicate. Owen was waiting for them. The human sat on the same fallen log, drinking from the same metal cup. He looked up as they approached, showing no surprise at their return. If anything, he looked like he had been expecting them. "You came back," Owen said simply. "Our collection is gone," Harveth replied, trying to keep his voice level. "All of it. Specimens returned to their points of origin across the galaxy. Creatures we held with technology you cannot possibly possess or understand. And the only clue we have is a message that came from here." Owen took a slow sip of his coffee. "Have you come to return the bear?" "I need answers first." "No," Owen said, his voice patient but firm. "First you return what you stole, then we can talk." Harveth felt Drevak tense beside him. The huntmaster was not accustomed to being dictated to by unarmed primitives, but Harveth raised one hand in a calming gesture. They were in no position to make demands. "Very well, we will return the bear to this location within the hour. It is still sedated but unharmed." Owen nodded. "Good, sit down while we wait, the ground is dry." Harveth looked at the dirt, at the fallen logs, at this backward forest on this backward planet where his entire career had been destroyed. Then he sat. Drevak remained standing, his pride apparently too injured to allow it. "I need to understand what happened," Harveth said. "Please, I have spent my life studying the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. I thought I understood the universe, but you did something impossible." Owen poured coffee from a thermos into a second cup and offered it to Harveth. The gesture was so unexpected that Harveth accepted automatically, his primary hands wrapping around the warm metal. "Humans have a saying," Owen began. "Home is where the heart is. Most species probably have something similar, but for humans it goes deeper than most people realize. We do not just live in places, we become part of them, and they become part of us." Harveth sipped the coffee. It was bitter and far too hot, but something about the ritual felt important. "This park," Owen continued, gesturing at the forest around them, "was not always protected. Humans used to take everything from the land. We cut down the trees, killed the animals, poisoned the water. We almost destroyed it all, but then something changed. People decided that some places should be preserved, not for profit, not for use. just to exist as they are. Economic irrationality, Harveth observed. Maybe, Owen agreed. But millions of humans fought for these places. They gave money, time, sometimes their lives to protect wilderness. And over generations, something happened. These places became sacred to us, not in a religious way necessarily, sacred in the sense that they matter beyond measure, beyond logic. Drevak made a dismissive sound. Sentiment does not explain physics. Owen looked up at the Huntmaster with eyes that held something ancient. Does it not? Your species has been spacefaring for what, 10,000 cycles? Humans have been telling stories for 100,000 years. We have been investing meaning into things, places, ideas for longer than your civilization has existed. That kind of collective belief, that weight of shared conviction across time, it leaves marks on reality that your scanners cannot measure. You are suggesting consciousness affects physical law, Harveth said slowly. I am suggesting that humans learned a long time ago that the universe is not as solid as it pretends to be. When enough people believe something matters, when enough people commit to protecting something, that commitment becomes real in ways your science has not figured out yet. A notification chimed on Harveth's datapad. The bear had been transported down. Owen stood and walked toward the recovery area. Harveth and Drevak followed. The grizzly lay on a cushioned platform, breathing steadily as the sedatives wore off. Owen checked the bear with practiced efficiency, examining its eyes, ears, teeth. Satisfied it was unharmed, he stepped back. When you took this bear, Owen said quietly, you took it from land that millions of humans decided to protect. Land that people fought for, died for, dedicated their lives to. Preserving that collective will, that shared commitment across generations, it has weight. I called them, Owen continued. Not just local authorities, I called everyone, park services across the country, wildlife organizations, conservation groups. I sent messages to people who care about these places, and I told them what happened, that someone came and took one of our bears from protected land. The bear's eyes opened. It looked around groggily, saw Owen, and relaxed slightly. Within hours, millions of people knew, and millions of people agreed that this was wrong, that the bear belongs here, that it should never have been taken. Owen crouched beside the bear, running a hand along its fur. When that many humans agree on something that deeply, when we speak with one voice about what should be, reality tends to listen. That is impossible, Drevak insisted. Your empty collection says otherwise, Owen replied. Harveth felt pieces clicking into place. The xenopsychology reports about humans assigning non-material value, the warnings about concepts that did not translate, sacred, protected, inalienable. You made a wish, Harveth said in wonder. A collective wish, millions of minds agreeing on a single truth. We decided what was right, Owen corrected, and we committed to it fully. No doubt, no compromise. The bear belongs here and everything else you took belongs where it came from. That is the truth we agreed on. Apparently the universe agreed with us. The bear stood, shaking off the last effects of sedation. It looked at Owen, then at the two aliens, then lumbered off into the forest without a backward glance. How, Harveth asked desperately, how does collective belief alter quantum states across interstellar distances? Owen smiled. If I knew the science, I would tell you. I'm just a park ranger. I know trees and trails and wildlife. But I know this, humans have been protecting things through belief and commitment since before we discovered fire. Maybe we learned it because Earth is such a harsh world. Maybe harsh worlds teach species to value what they have, to fight for it in ways that go beyond weapons. He poured the last of his coffee onto the ground. The bear is home, your other specimens are home. Now you should go home too, and please tell other collectors what you learned here. Harveth stood slowly. His career was over. The syndicate would never recover from this loss, but somehow, standing in this forest, listening to this simple human explain impossible things, he felt grateful to be alive. I will tell them, Harveth promised. I will tell everyone. They did not leave immediately. Harveth could not. The scientist in him demanded more understanding, even if his career was already destroyed. He asked Owen if they could talk longer. The human agreed and led them to a small wooden structure he called a ranger station. Inside, the building was simple but functional. Maps covered the walls showing trails and watersheds. A radio sat on a desk surrounded by paperwork. Photos of wildlife were pinned to a corkboard. This was where Owen worked, where he had made the calls that somehow unmade reality itself. Owen made fresh coffee. Harvath and Drevak sat on chairs designed for human proportions, uncomfortable but manageable. The morning sun streamed through windows that showed forest in every direction. "Tell me about Earth," Harvath said. "Your file says Class 12 Death World. What does that mean for species that evolve here?" Owen considered the question while pouring drinks. "It means nothing comes easy. Earth has tried to kill humans in every way possible. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts, predators, diseases. We survived not because we were strong, but because we were stubborn." "Stubbornness is not a survival trait," Drevak muttered. "It is when combined with creativity and cooperation," Owen replied. "Humans learned early that we could not survive alone. We formed groups, families, tribes, communities. We took care of each other. We shared food, knowledge, protection. And we learned something important: what we protect becomes part of us." He showed them one of the photos on the wall. A family of bears, 2 cubs playing while their mother watched. These bears almost went extinct. Humans hunted them, destroyed their habitat, poisoned them as pests. By the early 20th century, there were maybe 800 grizzlies left in the entire lower 48 states. They were done. Harvath leaned forward, interested despite himself. "But then humans changed," Owen continued. "We decided that losing the bears was unacceptable. We created protected areas like this park. We made laws against hunting them. We studied them, tracked them, helped them recover. It took decades. Generations of humans dedicated themselves to bringing the bears back." "Why?" Harvath asked. "What practical benefit did they provide?" Owen smiled. "None. That is the point. We protected them because they deserve to exist. Because a world without bears is less than it should be. Because these mountains are their home and we have no right to take that from them." He pulled out another photo. This one showed a younger Owen standing next to an elderly woman in a ranger uniform. "That is my grandmother. She was one of the first rangers in this park. She spent 40 years protecting these lands. Before she died, she told me something I have never forgotten. She said the land does not belong to us. We belong to the land. Our job is to remember that and help others remember too." Drevak shifted uncomfortably. "Poetic, but it does not explain quantum mechanics." "Maybe it does," Harvath said slowly. "Owen, how many humans care about these parks, about protecting wild places?" "Hard to say exactly. Millions visit the national parks every year. Tens of millions support conservation organizations. Hundreds of millions agree that wilderness should be preserved. In surveys, over 90% of humans say protecting nature is important." Harvath did calculations in his head. Earth's population was over 8 billion. If even 10% cared deeply about conservation, that was 800 million minds, all agreeing that certain places, certain creatures were sacred and should be protected. "Quantum mechanics includes observer effects," Harvath said, thinking out loud. "Consciousness collapses probability waves, but that is individual scale. What happens when millions of conscious minds observe the same truth simultaneously? When they do not just observe but commit to that truth with every fiber of their being?" "You tell me," Owen said. "You are the scientist." Harvath thought about the xenopsychology reports, about how humans had survived their death world through cooperation and shared belief, about how they had taken their ability to assign meaning and value and turned it into a survival strategy. Humans weaponized faith, Harvath realized. Not religious faith specifically, but the ability to collectively agree on what is real and what matters. You did not evolve claws or armor or venom. You evolved the ability to change reality through consensus. "That sounds dramatic," Owen said with a slight smile. I just made some phone calls. No, Harveth insisted. You activated a network, a distributed consciousness spanning millions of humans, all connected by communication technology, all capable of focusing intention on a single point. When you told them the bear was taken, you gave them a problem to solve. And they solved it the way humans always solve problems, by deciding what should be true and making it true through sheer collective will. Drevek stood abruptly. This is madness. Wishful thinking does not alter physics. Then explain the empty cells, Harveth snapped. Explain how creatures separated by light years all returned home simultaneously. Explain how containment fields that never failed suddenly held nothing. Drevek had no answer. Owen refilled their coffee cups. I cannot explain the how, but I can tell you why. Those creatures you took, they were in the wrong place, removed from their homes, caged for profit. That is wrong. And when humans agree something is wrong, we fix it. Sometimes with technology, sometimes with laws, sometimes with methods we do not understand but trust anyway. Your species is dangerous, Harveth said, but there was awe in his voice rather than fear. Only to those who threaten what we protect, Owen replied. The bears, the wolves, the eagles, these forests, these mountains, they are under our protection, not because we own them, but because we are their stewards. That responsibility is sacred to us. There was that word again, sacred. Harveth finally understood. Humans had turned evolution on its head. Instead of adapting to their environment, they had learned to make their environment adapt to them. Not through technology alone, but through collective belief given weight and form. They were not just a spacefaring species. They were reality hackers using consciousness itself as a tool. I need to warn the Syndicate, Harveth said. No, I need to warn everyone. Earth is not just a death world. It is something new, something we have not encountered before. Owen nodded. Tell them we want to be friends. Tell them we want to trade, share knowledge, explore together. But tell them also that some things are not for sale. Some things are protected, and protected means protected. Harveth stood to leave. Before he reached the door, he turned back. Thank you, Owen, for teaching me, and for not making us disappear along with the collection. Owen's expression became serious. I would never do that, you. Are people not specimens? You made a mistake, but you came back to fix it. That matters. As they walked back to the shuttle, Drevek finally spoke. I am never hunting on a death world again. Harveth laughed, the sound echoing through the forest. Wise decision. The shuttle lifted off from Earth's surface for the final time. Harveth watched through the viewport as the forest shrank below them, as the mountains became wrinkles in green fabric, as the curve of the planet became visible against the black of space. Somewhere down there, Owen was returning to his work, checking trails, monitoring wildlife, protecting a small piece of wilderness with the full weight of human conviction behind him. What will you tell the Syndicate? Drevek asked. Harveth pulled up his datapad and began composing his report. The words came slowly at first, then faster as understanding crystallized. The truth, that we encountered something unprecedented. That Earth is not just another death world with interesting specimens. That humans are not just another primitive species waiting to be cataloged and exploited. He paused, considering how to phrase the warning that needed to be heard. Humans are dangerous, he continued, but not in the way we expected. They do not have superior weapons or advanced shields. What they have is far more powerful. They have the ability to make reality conform to their collective will through methods we do not understand. And they will use that ability to protect what they consider sacred. Drevek watched the planet recede. Will anyone believe you? They will when they check the recovery sites. Every specimen we lost has been confirmed back in its original location. Rendering worms in Sector 9. Phase stalkers in the Dark Nebula, all of them exactly where they came from. That is not natural. That is not technology. That is something else entirely. The shuttle docked with the collection ship. The cargo bay where Harveth had once displayed his prizes now stood empty except for cleaning equipment. The syndicate had already sent liquidation teams to process the loss. His investors were furious. His reputation was destroyed. But Harveth felt no regret. He felt like he had glimpsed something profound about the nature of the universe itself. He filed his report and sent it to every major database in galactic civilization. Other collectors needed to know. Researchers needed to study. This, Earth needed to be approached with respect rather than exploitation. 3 days later, the responses began arriving. Some dismissed his report as fraud or madness. Others were intrigued but skeptical. A few, particularly xenopsychologists and quantum physicists, asked for more data. They wanted to study the phenomenon to understand how consciousness could affect matter across interstellar distances. But the response that surprised Harveth most came from another collector, an old rival named Seleth who operated in the outer sectors. "I believe you," the message read. "3 cycles ago I attempted to collect specimens from a world in the Kepler region. The inhabitants were primitive, barely tool-using, but when I took their largest predator, something similar happened. My entire collection vanished overnight. I thought it was equipment failure and never reported it. Now I understand. That world was also protected, just not by humans. The universe has more rules than we thought." Harveth forwarded the message to the researchers. If this had happened before, if other species could do similar things, then the implications were staggering. Weeks passed. Harveth dissolved the syndicate and began working as a consultant, helping researchers understand what he had experienced. The scientific community was divided. Some insisted there must be a rational explanation involving unknown technology or natural phenomena. Others proposed new theories about the relationship between consciousness and quantum mechanics. Then the invitation arrived. Earth's governments, having learned about the incident through Owen's reports, wanted to establish formal first contact protocols. They invited Harveth to return as part of a diplomatic delegation. He would be one of the first non-human civilians to visit Earth officially. He accepted immediately. The second trip to Earth was nothing like the first. This time he landed at a facility designed for interspecies exchange. Human diplomats greeted him with courtesy. Scientists wanted to hear his perspective. And Owen, now serving as an advisor on human-alien relations, was there to welcome him. "You came back," Owen said, echoing their last meeting. "I wanted to understand," Harveth replied. "I still do." Over the following weeks, Harveth learned about Earth in ways his initial surveys never captured. He met humans from different cultures, each with their own protected places and sacred traditions. He learned about the diversity of human belief systems, all of them somehow connected to this deep conviction that some things mattered beyond practical value. He visited other national parks, saw different ecosystems, met other rangers who shared Owen's dedication. He observed how humans balanced exploitation and preservation, how they struggled with their own destructive impulses while fighting to protect what remained wild. And everywhere he went, he felt it. That weight of collective human consciousness, that shared agreement about what was worth preserving. It was not magic. It was not technology. It was something uniquely human, evolved over millions of years on a world that demanded adaptation or extinction. On his last day, Owen took him back to the original park. They hiked to a ridge overlooking the valley where the bear had been taken and returned. The grizzly was there, fishing in the river with 2 cubs playing nearby. "She had babies," Owen said with quiet satisfaction. "New generation to carry on." Harveth watched the bears through his scanning equipment, taking measurements and notes. But this time, the data felt different. These were not specimens to be collected. They were living beings in their natural home, protected by forces that transcended simple physical law. "What will you do now?" Owen asked. "Continue researching, teaching, making sure others understand what I learned here." Harveth turned to face the human. "And perhaps, if Earth would allow it, I would like to study how your species does this, not to exploit it, but to understand it. This ability you have to make the universe listen to what you believe is right, it could change everything we know about reality itself." Owen smiled. We would like that. Learning together sounds better than taking from each other. They stood on the ridge until sunset painted the mountains gold and red. Below them, the bears fished and played, unaware that they had been at the center of a confrontation between species, between different understandings of reality. Harveth filed one final report before leaving Earth's orbit. It was simple, direct, and would be read by collectors and researchers across the galaxy for generations. Earth is a protected world, not by weapons or force fields, but by the collective will of 8 billion humans who have decided their home is sacred. Approach with respect, trade fairly, learn from them, but never ever try to take what they have decided to protect. Because humans have a power we do not understand, the power to make what they believe become true. And they believe with absolute conviction that some things should never be caged. Years later, Earth's protected status would become one of the foundational principles of galactic law. The concept of conservation, of protecting species and places not for profit, but because they deserve to exist, would spread to dozens of worlds. And rangers across the galaxy would tell the story of Owen and the bear, about the day humanity taught the universe that some things are more powerful than technology. Things like conviction, like responsibility, like love for a wild place and the creatures that call it home. The deadliest species in the galaxy had not disappeared because of weapons or science. They had disappeared because a human made a few phone calls and reminded the universe that some things are sacred. And the universe, it seemed, agreed.